Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The American support for the Ukrainian war is faltering. The Pentagon has now said that it is halting shipments of certain crucial weapon systems like Patriot interceptors, howitzer munitions, missile and grenade launchers, amongst other things. There are serious doubts on whether this is a deliberate policy decision or whether this is a decision that the United States has been forced to take because of the active American backing of the Israelis in the Iran-Israel war, which has resulted in the Americans stretching themselves thin. But this announcement has had immediate consequences for Ukraine. Despite Donald Trump having held phone calls with Vladimir Putin, Russia has announced that it finds it unable to achieve its strategic objectives in Ukraine through diplomatic means. Moscow, for its part, has intensified its scale and frequency of attacks, having staged its largest aerial attack on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv this week with more than 540 drones and 11 ballistic missiles. Trump has again threatened Russia with sanctions. But the question that needs to be asked is this: without putting the military muscle to roll back the Russian invasion, is Donald Trump being naive if he thinks he can achieve a ceasefire with Russia just on the basis of his phone calls with Vladimir Putin and his threat of more sanctions on Russia? Our next report gets you more details. Night after night, Ukraine has been battling the devastating aerial attacks by a swarm of Russian drones and missiles. And just when the Pentagon announced that it will be halting the shipment of crucial weapon systems like the Patriot interceptors and missile and grenade launchers, Russia bombarded the Ukrainian capital Kyiv with the biggest aerial attack that Kyiv has witnessed since the beginning of the Russian invasion more than 3 years ago. Buildings and other infrastructure was devastated. This dramatic video captures the moment when a Russian-launched drone devastated a residential area in Kyiv. People took shelter in metro stations underground. By the time the sun rose again, at least 23 people had sustained serious injuries. This is no longer even a war of attrition. With Ukrainian weapon supplies from America uncertain, Volodymyr Zelensky understands the challenge that his soldiers are up against.
It was a rocky start to the day, with more than 500 Russian attack drones and missiles. Difficult, but a significant number were shot down. Regrettably, some struck their targets. Interceptor drones demonstrated important performance today. Dozens of Shaheeds were taken down specifically by interceptors. Today, I also spoke with President Trump. It was an important conversation. We agreed to arrange a meeting between our teams to strengthen air defense capabilities. We had an in-depth discussion about joint production, something both us and the United States need.
But Ukraine has been able to hit back at Russia as well. On the 4th of July, Ukraine staged a drone attack on the electric grid of Sergiev Posad district in Moscow. Sergiev Posad in Moscow is considered the spiritual heart of Russia's Orthodox Church. But the Ukrainian attacks inside Russia pale in comparison to the devastation that Moscow has wreaked inside Ukraine. Drones, cruise missiles and even hypersonic missiles like Kinzhal have been regularly unleashed on what Russia describes as military targets. In the central Ukrainian city of Poltava, 2 people were killed and at least 47 others sustained some serious injuries when a building that Russia described as a military recruitment center was struck. But the people in Poltava described that the buildings that came under attack also consisted of many civilian homes that had nothing to do with the military recruitment center.
During the air alert, the hum of Shahed drones was heard loudly. One by one, they hit quite a populous residential and business area. Private dwellings, businesses, multi-story buildings, and a school were damaged in the attack.
Внаслідок якого були пошкоджені приватні будинки.
Я знаходилась на роботі, був внук вдома.
I was at work. My grandson was at home. He is on holidays now. Thank God he is alive. We took him away from here. My husband was out in the shop. My grandson survived it by lying on the floor.
Получилось, це все пережив внук, лежачи на підлозі.
Donald Trump's optimism that he can secure a ceasefire for Ukraine, but talking to Vladimir Putin, is beginning to wane. To end the war by cutting off the supply of weapons to Ukraine would be tantamount to surrender to the Russian war machine. So Trump is again talking of sanctions.
We talk about sanctions a lot, yeah. What does he say? I would say he's not thrilled with it, but he's been able to handle sanctions, but these are pretty biting sanctions. No, we talk about sanctions a lot. And he understands that it may be coming, and he's a professional.
On the battlefield, the Ukrainian soldiers are increasingly aware that Ukraine may soon have to rely on its own weapons production capacity to fight. Soldiers from the 13th Kharkiv Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine praised the Ukrainian-manufactured 155mm howitzer guns. They described the new guns as more powerful, accurate and reliable.
Дуже добре, що Україна почала власне виробництво.
It's a good thing that Ukraine launched its own production of this type of cannons, 155mm caliber. As much as we would like it, our partners provide some assistance but not enough weapons. We are certainly thankful for their assistance, but we definitely want more, and it's good that Ukraine has started its own production. Moreover, it is a caliber that is very effective at destroying the enemy.
Дуже добре, що Україна почала власне виробництво.
There is no silver bullet at the disposal of Ukraine to win this war. The F-16 fighter jets, which Kyiv had hoped would defend the Ukrainian skies, have proven themselves to be inadequate. At the funeral service of one of Ukraine's most experienced F-16 fighter pilots, Oleh Zakharchuk, the deputy commander of Ukraine's Western Air Command, said that there is no such thing as enough weapons. With Ukraine's reserves of air defense systems running low, and with the United States halting its shipment of critical weapon systems, and Europe's inability to fill the gap left by the United States, Ukraine, which still hopes to be a member of the NATO military alliance, is increasingly fighting this war on its own. The Gaza Strip has been reduced to a dust bowl of debris. More than 57,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians, including women and children, have been killed by the Israeli military since the 7th of October 2023. Though Israel eased its total blockade on humanitarian aid and commercial supplies to the besieged Gaza Strip in the month of May, the limited number of truckloads that are coming in are still barely a trickle. Worse, the frequently displaced starving Palestinians who are jostling for a few packets of food have been repeatedly shot at by the Israeli military and American contractors who are said to be guarding the aid distribution sites. The United Nations Human Rights Office has pegged the number of Palestinians who have been killed at these controversial aid distribution sites and near humanitarian convoys to be at least 613. Our next report gets you more details.
Gaza is the hungriest place on earth.
The United Nations calls Gaza the hungriest place on earth. With a limited number of aid trucks that have been allowed to come in by Israel barely a trickle. The weaponization of food by Israel, in addition to restricting or preventing access to life-sustaining services, has given rise to accusations of war crimes, but to no avail. As if that was not enough, Israel has also stepped up its offensive in Gaza, where more bombs fall daily, claiming dozens of lives. Stripped of their dignity, scores of Palestinians have been forced to undertake long, arduous trips to the United States and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF's aid distribution centers, which are veritably a death trap for the starving Palestinians.
The latest figures that we have recorded 613 killings, both at GHF points and near humanitarian convoys. Now, this is a figure as of the 27th of June. Since then, I was reading our latest sitrep. There have been further incidents, 5 killed, 6 killed, 14-year-old boy shot in the head, another 14-year-old boy. We haven't compiled all these figures. Colleagues have pointed out the challenges of verifying information because we don't have eyes and ears on the ground. International press is not being allowed, and neither are we. We are doing what we can to try to verify these figures, but there's a time lag, and we will perhaps never be able to grasp the full scale of what's happening here because of the lack of access. On who is responsible, it is clear that the Israeli military has shelled and shot at Palestinians trying to reach the distribution points. How many killings, who is responsible for that? We need an investigation. We need access, we need an independent inquiry, and we need accountability for these killings.
Registered in Delaware, GHF is an American organization that was established in February to distribute humanitarian aid during the ongoing Gaza humanitarian crisis. But the United Nations and major aid groups have refused to cooperate with the foundation's new aid system, calling it unethical and unworkable. Furthermore, they've accused it of cooperating with Israel's goals in the 21-month-old war against Hamas in a way that violates humanitarian principles. Tel Aviv continues to insist that the new aid plan will undermine what remains of Hamas control in Gaza. But this new video released by the Associated Press only confirmed what was long feared. American contractors guarding aid distribution sites in Gaza are using live ammunition and stun grenades on hungry Palestinians scrambling for food. In the video, hundreds of Palestinians crowded between metal gates can be seen jostling for aid amid the sound of bullets, stun grenades, and the sting of pepper spray.
Testimonies and videos obtained by the Associated Press show American contractors guarding aid distribution sites inside Gaza are using live ammunition and stun grenades as hungry Palestinians scramble for food. 2 U.S. contractors who spoke to us on the condition of anonymity because they were revealing their employer's internal operations said they were coming out because they were disturbed by what they saw as dangerous and irresponsible practices. Both have extensive military experience. They say the security staff on site were often unqualified, unvetted, and had an open license to do whatever they wished.
Reportedly, live bullets, stun grenades and pepper spray were used at nearly every distribution site, even if there was no threat. But the US government, it seems, is in no mood to roll back this controversial aid distribution system despite much public outcry. Last month, it pledged $30 million for the group to continue operations, which incidentally is the first known US donation to the group whose other sources of funding remain opaque. On Thursday, the US president said that he wants safety for the people of Gaza, alluding to the new 60-day ceasefire proposal, which he called his final proposal and which he expects Hamas to accept. As Israel continues its bombardment and siege of the Gaza Strip, more than 2 million Palestinians teetering on the brink of famine for lack of any other option continue to flock to these aid distribution sites and centers, risking their life and limb.
On the 4th of July, Pakistan's army claimed to have killed about 30 militants in the border district of North Waziristan who attempted to cross the border from Afghanistan. Incidentally, the claim by the Pakistani Army comes on the heels of a suicide attack in the same region that killed about 16 Pakistani soldiers. According to the Pakistani military, which lauded its troops for preventing a potential catastrophe, all 30 militants who were killed in the past 3 days belong to the Pakistani Taliban or its affiliates. though the Pakistani military has not provided details of the operation. It also claims to have seized a large quantity of weapons, ammunition and explosives. Our next report gets you more.
Set up in 2007, the Pakistan Taliban, also known as the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, is an umbrella alliance of Sunni militant groups who've been waging an armed insurgency against the Pakistan government for close to 2 decades. Sharing the same hardline ideology as the Afghan Taliban, the Pakistan Taliban is closely allied with it, though it is a separate group. Its stated aim is to impose its interpretation of Sharia or Islamic law in Pakistan. In November 2022, the militant outfit unilaterally ended a ceasefire with the Pakistan government. Pakistan has witnessed an escalation in violence, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan provinces, in the wake of Afghan Taliban seizing power in Afghanistan in August 2021. Islamabad has repeatedly claimed that insurgents operate from areas across the border, a charge that has been denied by the ruling Afghan Taliban. 2024 turned out to be the deadliest year for the civil and military security forces of Pakistan in a decade, with at least 685 security men losing their lives amid a total of 444 terror attacks. Since the beginning of this year, around 290 people, mostly security officials, have been killed in attacks by armed groups fighting the government in both the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan provinces. On the 28th of June, at least 16 Pakistani soldiers were killed and more than 24 people, including civilians, were wounded in a suicide attack in the border district of North Waziristan in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The responsibility for the dastardly attack is claimed by the suicide bomber wing of the Hafiz Gul Bahadur armed group, a faction of the Pakistan Taliban. The Friday claim by the Pakistani Army of killing 30 militants also took place in the same restive district. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was quick to applaud the security forces for thwarting the infiltration attempt. Talking tough, he reiterated his administration's commitment to completely eliminate all forms of terrorism from the country. Last month, Pakistan's government had increased defense spending by 20%, with 14% of the country's overall budget now assigned to the army. But the big question is, will it be enough in bringing the curtains down on the 2-decade-long armed insurgency waged by the Pakistan Taliban?
The West African nation of Togo was rocked by 3 days of anti-government demonstrations beginning on the 26th of June, called by the civil society groups and social media influencers. According to civil rights groups, at least 7 people have been killed in the government crackdown on protests that was sparked by the Togolese president Faure Gnassingbe's appointment in the month of May to the powerful role of President of the Council of Ministers, for which there is no fixed term limit. In addition to the 7 people who have been killed, dozens have been arrested in the government clampdown on protests, according to the Amnesty International. Our next report gets you more details.
Faure Gnassingbe has led Togo since 2005. First as its 4th president following the death of his father, until 3rd of May 2025 when he was sworn in to a new post of President of the Council of Ministers, which has no official term limits, making him eligible for re-election by the parliament indefinitely. Critics and opposition figures have labeled the changes to the constitution as an institutional coup d'etat. giving rise to anger and violence on the streets of the West African country. Since 2022, demonstrations have been banned in the country, with the authorities citing security reasons. But that didn't stop 3 days of demonstrations by online activists and youth-led movements that began in the capital city of Lomé on Thursday, on a peaceful note, but turned violent on Friday and Saturday, with protesters calling for the Togolese president to step down. Violent clashes broke out between the security forces and demonstrators.
All we want is for Nasing Bey to step down. We'll keep protesting even after the 3 days until he finally leaves power.
He should step aside and let someone else lead. You can't keep ruling us by force forever. Let someone else prove what they can do.
For, please set Togo free. This country doesn't belong to you or the Nasingbe family. Just let go of the country. We the citizens will lead the country.
Concrete block barriers were set up in several neighborhoods of the capital, with some protesters burning tires and furniture for barricades in suburban areas. In what was deemed disproportionate force against peaceful protesters, tear gas and batons were used by the security forces to disperse crowds blocking roads, while many businesses remained shuttered amidst a heavy police presence throughout the capital city of Lomé. Reportedly, 7 bodies were recovered from rivers, with security forces and militias being accused of committing abuses.
It was yesterday that our brother died in the lagoon, and it was while searching for his body today that we came across the 2 other bodies in the water.
The brazen change in the government structure has been widely criticized in a region threatened by rampant coups and other threats to the democratic structure. But the Togolese government, doubling down, has threatened legal action against the protests' organizers, and have labeled the protests a campaign of disinformation and hatred orchestrated from abroad. By Sunday, an eerie calm had returned to most of Lomé, with shops reopened and businesses operating as usual. But in a country where the president's family has ruled since 1967, this semblance of normalcy could any day spiral out of control.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh. I'll see you again next week.